Hello and welcome to Down the Line, your hard-hitting look at sports news and opinion. I'm Sam Groth, and alongside me, a man who carried me many times on the doubles court, former world number one, Leighton Hewitt. Rusty, how are you handling isolation? Good to be here.
No, well, it's good to be here, and I'm really looking forward to this show. To be alongside you, mate, and we spent a lot of great moments on the doubles court playing for Australia again. Now to have some opinions, and certainly you've made some real headlines this week with a couple of tweets that you've put out, and you've certainly got some big reaction, Grothy.
I didn't mean it to go as big as it did, I tell you.
Well, this is one of them, and obviously with the footy hubs at the moment, it's such a big talking point, and you've thrown it out there that tennis players obviously travel so much time throughout the year, and, you know, I guess we've known about it, but it certainly hit a bit of a point, and it was actually Shane Mumford's wife, who is Jo Konta, the English tennis player's sister as well, who came back quite hard at you in her reaction.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I think that's who this hub situation affects the worst, the families. And
you even got a couple of emojis there too, mate, to finish it off, which was nice.
She wasn't holding back, was she? But, you know, I'm pretty open in my honest opinions about this situation. You know, I think you and I can probably relate pretty closely, but I think our views probably vary a little bit on the situation. But, you know, there's plenty of people out there, professional sports people who go out and have to go away from home, and 2020 is not the world we all signed up for at the moment. And I think, you know, if we want to see footy up and running again, we might have to go up or go into this hub situation to be able to get it back on the field. But
yeah, absolutely. And I agree from a hub and being able to travel, you know, and I think the players have to take a responsibility to do a bit more of it. It's a totally different circumstances that they find themselves in this year. But I think for the good of the game and also the Australian public to try and get AFL back on the screens as well, into our living rooms, and get some kind of more normality. I think the biggest thing though was they were probably thinking it might be 4 to 8 weeks, possibly max. All of a sudden it comes out that it's a possible 20 weeks. And I still think that 90% of the AFL football players, all the young blokes, would actually love to go and isolate and be part of a team, quarantine. I think you get to know your teammates, your coaching staff, in a lot closer surroundings, which will actually bring out the best in some of those guys. It's probably some of the older players that have those young families as well, and a lot of them have moved to states where they don't actually have a lot of help around them.
Well, you travelled a lot for a lot of years, obviously Beck and the kids on the road with you. Do the players need to suck it up, or do they need to have that ability to take their families with them? Do you think that would make a difference?
Well, for me, it was tough. Once I had a young family with Beck and we had our first child, Mia, I only really wanted to travel 3 to 4 weeks at a time and then come home and actually see them. And I didn't take them on the road all the time. I took them to some of the bigger tournaments. But I feel it's important for the players to have the bigger picture as well. And I think that's where, if we can get through this first stage, hopefully the border restrictions will open up and these guys will actually be given some kind of normality to be able to fly interstate and actually be able to quarantine there, play a couple of matches in one particular state and then get home.
Well, we'll agree to disagree a little bit on our football situation, but obviously domestically it's the AFL and the NRL, but globally there's so many sports that aren't able to take the court or the field at the moment. Let's take a look at a few of those.
Events are moving quickly tonight here and across the world as the coronavirus outbreak is officially declared a pandemic.
The coronavirus is making its impact felt across the world of sports.
Fans, due to unforeseen circumstances, the game tonight has been postponed.
Breaking news here on CBS Sports HQ, and it is monster news. The NBA has suspended the season after Rudy Gobert has tested positive for coronavirus.
To our race fans, we're terribly disappointed that the event can't go ahead.
Cricket Australia announced this morning the public would not be permitted into the game or any of the following matches.
We will be advising against non-essential gatherings of persons of 500 people or greater.
All NRL games in round 1 will continue to proceed as planned. In round 2, our games will continue to proceed as planned, albeit with our stadiums will be closed to fans.
The advice from the AFL is to close all training sessions.
It follows the difficult yet necessary decision to lock fans out of round 1 fixtures.
We have some breaking news. The Masters has officially been postponed.
Much of the big football events in Europe have been put on hold.
Every person entering New Zealand will be required to enter self-isolation for 14 days.
Obviously the most important thing for the fans and the game is we try and keep the competition going.
We see all those sports there. The NRL, they've set a date that they want to come back. You saw the New Zealand Warriors, though. They might not be able to take part in the competition.
At all, which makes it extremely tough. And that's the hardest thing with the international restrictions right now and the borders being closed. But I think it really started to hit home. And I know for the tennis players, was once Wimbledon, a major. The French Open, a couple of months before that, actually postponed their event. They tried to pick a week later in the year that might actually work for them to be able to get it in. Whereas we know Wimbledon, the All England club, they have to play on grass. That's what the tournament is. There's only a few months within the English summer that you actually have the opportunity to play on a grass court. Once that got cancelled for the year, I think it really started to hit home with a lot of people then, okay, this is going to be a long time, especially for the international travel. We saw golf on two different fronts. The Masters, such a big event there in America, that actually got postponed to later in the year, where they were actually going to try and do their best to get through and have an opportunity to play in November, which will be totally different conditions. Whereas you see the British Open in golf, they actually cancelled. They're only going to look forward to 2021 now.
Yeah, it's interesting to see how all these sports take a different take. The EPL has set a date of June 13 to try to get back on the field. Formula One, which we were both involved in Melbourne. I was an ambassador for the event. You got to get in one of the Formula One cars, probably one of the only few people...
Well, I was actually the fastest, I think, around the Albert Park Lake this year. So I won the Australian Grand Prix. I was fortunate enough to go in the F1 two-seater and do a couple of laps around there. It was a big buzz. But then the following morning, that's when it all... chaos hit at Albert Park there when they actually cancelled it. I think in Australia, that's when it started to hit home. Even though the AFL and the NRL tried to get a couple of extra weeks out of their respective sports, that's when it hit home that the world of international sport was really going to change.
We're going to chat to Scott Pye a little bit later. He was actually there as a V8 supercar driver over that weekend and get his take on that. But a man that's affected by this and someone who is in red-hot form is our own Adam Scott, a guy you're pretty close to, and he'd been pretty disappointed about the postponement of the Masters because I gave him a red-hot chance of trying to be a contender for this title.
Well, his game matches up so well to the Augusta lineup and how it plays on that particular course. And he's so good tee to green, and it's really only been his putting sometimes that's let him down. As you said, though, he was in red-hot form. He won the Australian PGA in late December. Then he had already won a title in February on the PGA Tour. He had consolidated his position in the top 15 again on the worldwide stage, and I think he was starting to get in his groove again. I know for one, Scotty really wants to go out there and do his damage in the majors, though. That's why he's still playing the game. That's why he does all the hard work. He's actually based on the Gold Coast now. We both have places in the Bahamas. He's one of my neighbours over there. But as soon as this all happened, he came back to Australia with his very young family. He's on the Gold Coast. How does this situation pan out for him? Going back, if our borders are restricted and he actually can't get over there, it's fine to say in one word that, yes, we're going to try and play on the PGA Tour in June. But is it realistic? It's an international sport. You want to get the best players over there to actually have an opportunity to compete. And we have the same issue in tennis.
Yeah, it's certainly a US tour, but it's made up of international athletes coming from all over the globe. But a big one, especially something that we can both relate to. I think you're a three-time Olympian. I managed to get myself into Rio as the last person accepted. But the Olympic Games, I don't think it's necessarily got the headlines here in Australia that it probably should have, because whether a little bit of shine has gone off the way we view the Olympics as a sport here in Australia, I definitely don't feel that way. But I don't think, and I guess, how would the athletes feel that don't manage to get to Tokyo in 2020 that have almost prepared for their whole sporting life?
And that's the hardest thing, because we're fortunate as tennis players, and I know now golf's back in the Olympics as well, that we get the opportunity, even if we lose first round in the Olympic Games, within a month later we're playing the US Open. One of our big four majors, where a lot of the other major sports in an Olympic Games, they're doing everything possible just for the 2 weeks every 4 years to get their opportunity of doing something in the Summer Olympics. And for that now to be put off for a year, it's tough. I really like, though, that they've kept the qualifying. So if you have qualified already, you still have got your ticket to Tokyo for 2021.
I think that's important, isn't it? Because the athletes that have peaked or tried to get themselves peaking to get into the Games as well.
Well, it's not their fault. So that they've got the opportunity now to prepare. They probably have to have a little bit of a layoff, I think, just to refresh mentally and physically before starting to build up again. It's going to be a different schedule for everyone. For the tennis players, it's tough because there were certain players that were focusing on their ranking, being able to get to 50, 60, 70 in the world to that really close cut line. As you said, you scraped in with only a couple of days' notice before you had to go over to Rio. And a lot of the players, they had that in the back of their mind before the season started. Now it's all been thrown into turmoil. A lot of those would have thought, yeah, I've got enough points in the bank where I can actually make the Olympics this year. Well, how are the ATP points going to look in another 12 months' time?
Well, it's a good point that you raise. Obviously, the tennis world, it's an ever-changing landscape right now. Those players, they're having to adapt. At the moment, we're looking at an August start for tennis. I think that's a little bit unrealistic with what we're seeing happening in the United States at the moment. That's where the tour is planning on picking up, around that Cincinnati week, the Cincinnati Masters, and you can't see them playing the US Open right now, I don't think, with what's going on in New York. I mean,
no, well, not only in New York.
Arthur Ashe Stadium's
exactly,
a hospital, though.
Exactly.
I mean,
Billie Jean King Tennis Centre, it's actually turned into a hospital to look after the coronavirus patients, and New York's been possibly the hardest hit city everywhere across the world. So to hold a major event there within a few months is going to be a big ask, but I know they're already trying to think of other ways to possibly do it. There has been a little bit of talk about even moving the US Open to Indian Wells, which got cancelled. That was the first tournament that got cancelled. It was a major one at the start of March. It has the facilities to be able to do it. They would look to possibly postpone that maybe to a November time frame.
Dry, hot heat, which they think maybe the virus doesn't quite cope as well in. They've got the ability to isolate out there in the desert, but the big thing as well is right now, we talk about the football players and they're still getting paid and the hub situation. Well, in tennis, no play, no pay. And so there's a huge conversation right now around the way the tour operates, but this player relief fund has been a big one, pushed by Novak Djokovic, trying to get some support for the lower ranked players. But a fair bit of, I guess, resistance, I think, has come internally from players, but the biggest name that's been resistant to it is, of course, the Australian Open finalist, Dominic Thiem.
Yeah, and I think it got taken out of proportion what he was saying in a lot of ways, because I know Dominic well, and he was basically going out there and saying, well, I feel like I have no problem giving my money to certain organisations that really need it at the moment. He had a problem with some of the lesser-ranked tennis players that day in, day out aren't giving 100% of themselves to the sport to try and maximise their potential. And then his hard-earned money and the rest of the tour in the top 100 is actually going towards those players. For me, it's a touchy subject because I look at someone that's worked extremely hard like James Duckworth in the last few years. He's done everything right to give himself the best opportunity of getting back in the top 100. He's making no money right now as we speak. You know, he's running at a loss, yet the ATP want him to potentially come out and give $5,000 or $10,000 to players ranked just outside 100. I don't think that sits well. I don't think it's going to probably get over the line with a lot of those lesser players. And if you're actually looking at the breakdown of money, I think those top 4 or 5 guys can probably afford a little bit more than what they're actually going to give.
Yeah, and it's hard, isn't it? Because you've worked to be those top guys too, and I know they make a lot more, but I also think maybe the prize money is not quite distributed evenly enough. You look at a guy like Novak Djokovic winning the Australian Open, you're talking $4 to $5 million for winning a final in a Grand Slam. If you were to go and take $500,000 off the men's and women's purse from that winner's check and distribute it, there's all of a sudden $8 million a year or $4 million a year, depending on how much you take. This
is what the players have spoken about for a long time. And I think the ATP should start looking in their backyard a little bit with that and how they can sort of set it up differently, that those lesser players coming through, and it has gone up over the years. From when I first started, the prize money in qualifying of the majors and the Grand Slams is way up on compared to what it was 25 years ago. So it's moving in the right direction. But I think at the end of the day, you know, the tournaments, the ATP, they want to see the winners holding a massive check there with a massive amount of dollar signs sitting right on the front stage on that final Sunday evening of a tournament, and they're kind of trying to outdo themselves all the time as well. So we have to try and split it up a little bit better, and I think the players would get a lot more than just the relief fund money.
Well, it's a good visual, isn't it, when you have a player standing there with a $4 or $5 million check, but a man who's been very vocal about supporting the lower ranked players and how to distribute prize money a little bit better. It's our own Australian, John Millman.
He's got the break. What a start. Touch of class to win the second set. Roger Federer.
Oh my goodness.
Federer, he's got the lead. All right, put the kettle on, grab a cuppa, because we're going to 5. This is a historic tiebreak coming our way. Federer, he finds a way.
Well, we saw that incredible match that Johnny played there at the Australian Open, and probably more incredible one was the year before at the US Open, but we're lucky enough to have Johnny join us here on the line. Johnny, good to see you, mate.
Good to see you, boys. Always good to see some fellow Davis Cup members.
We're just talking about that, Johnny. We just had a look at your match, obviously, against Roger Federer. You started the year so strongly, made a great run there, was nearly able to pull off a massive upset. But only a few weeks later, you probably had one of your biggest weekends in tennis history where you were actually able to lead the Davis Cup boys to victory against Brazil. It seems like an awfully long time since then, mate. That was the last time you played.
Oh, it is, and I'm wearing my Davis Cup training shirt right now.
I love it, mate. It looks good on you.
I've got mine underneath.
I know. I'll get that in there. Yeah, you can see the flag. Look, it's obviously been a fair bit of time between drinks, but if there's one memory to last during this time off, and that being the Davis Cup match, it's a pretty good one to have during this time off. It gives you lots of motivation. Obviously, playing Davis Cup's something that you don't take for granted, and I don't have to mention that with you two boys. I watched you play. Obviously, I'm lucky enough to get captained by you, Leighton, and I love being in that team environment.
Yeah, well, we love everything that you lay out there for the green and gold, mate. It's a special honour to wear the Australian gold jacket when you're out there, mate, and you couldn't have worn it prouder that week. But it was interesting. One of the guys you played, actually, here you go, Seaboth Wild, he was actually the first tennis player to get the coronavirus, actually, only a couple of weeks after that Davis Cup, which was interesting because you and I were obviously both shaking hands with him after the match.
Yeah, and straight away, obviously, I had to ask the questions. I got in contact with our Davis Cup doctor, David Brooks. He just advised me to look out for any symptoms, kind of gave me the talk over the phone just to be aware of that. And then I got in contact actually with a few of the Brazilian Davis Cup tennis players just to see if they're showing any type of symptoms whatsoever. And luckily enough, they were all in the clear. So, we can probably assume now that he got it probably in transit after Davis Cup, but I've touched base with him also, and he's recovered now, so I think that's the most important thing to take away from it.
And I'm sure this is a really tough time for you, Johnny, now. You want to be out there playing. You're 30 years old now as well. How are you looking about this time off the court? Is it one way of actually trying to get on top of all those little niggles and injuries that you've had the last few years and trying to sort of prolong your career for another year or two? Or you think it's a bit tougher because you were on such a roll, you got towards your career high ranking right before you had to put the rackets down?
Yeah, it's unprecedented, isn't it? And I think what makes it tricky is that because we haven't faced this before, we're unsure as to what the right approach is, and obviously I'm trying to get on top of the little niggling injuries. But on the flip side, it's quite tricky because I think once you're on the tour, you get into a rhythm of being able to play and compete day in, day out. And that's actually something that your body kind of gets used to. So it's going to be tough to get it going again. I'm trying to stay on top of things. Obviously, I require a high level of physicality in my matches, so I'm trying to do all the off-court work right now and hopefully build up the on-court work a little bit closer to return of play.
Hey, Johnny, if they opted to give the players an area where they could quarantine and come play 3 months in one place, would you be up for that just to get back on court?
Oh, geez, you're asking the tough questions
Grothy's
now,
gone fishing
I know
again,
you're
mate.
pretty opinionated on the matter. Look, I'll do anything to get back and play tennis. I just love getting out there. I love competing. And it's part of our job, I've experienced, some pretty lonely times on the tour, that's for sure. And I think that goes part and parcel with being a tennis player. But, look, if given the opportunity, I'd be out there because I just love doing what I do. And I know I'm not going to take it for granted. My career is not going to last forever. As Leighton mentioned, I'm getting towards the pointy end probably, and any chance to get on court, I'll take.
Very diplomatic, mate. I think you'll still get a Christmas card from Eva Mumford, unlike myself. But in this isolation period, one man that got thrown under the bus, I guess, is a teammate of yours and a fellow Australian player, Nick Kyrgios. What did you make of the whole Tsitsipas signed Kyrgios phone number debacle?
And it was actually his real number.
Oh, that's incredible.
I actually can't believe it. I thought Nick actually took it pretty well. From what I understand, he laughed it off as a bit of a joke, but I saw his notifications on his phone and they went through the roof. I can
Look at them all.
tell you. It's unbelievable because I don't think that Tsitsipas used his head, to be honest with you. I think he had a bit of a cabbage. cabbage on his shoulders during isolation.
There's going to be some revenge planned for sure from Nick Kyrgios, and he's going to be having to watch his back for quite a while. But, Johnny, we have a lot of fun at the Davis Cup ties, mate, and we were keen to get out there and play a round of golf, and you didn't want to play with me at the Davis Cup, mate. You chose Jordan Thompson and actually wanted to play against myself and my mate Jamin Crabb, one of the other coaches. And this is actually Crabby and I, after we took victory on the 17th, mate, we didn't have to play the 18th hole. And that last photo where you were in the back of the golf cart, that was actually you and Tomo, mate, trying to pick up your clubs and drive off. So, yeah, how's the golf game going? Are you able to play or practice a little bit up there before I take you on again?
Well, first of all, I want to say we fared a little bit better than our stringer, who paid out a bet. Who paid out a bet with me. He thought he was going to go 18 over for the round. He was 18 over after 3 holes. So he paid out the bet to me after the third. So it was win-win from there. And look, I did take Tomo. He's a battler. He gets into the trenches. You know, I love what he's about. And also, his ex was a tour professional player, so I thought he might have picked up a few more tips than...
He would have been a good caddy, I reckon, Tomo.
Than perhaps he showed, but... Look, I'm sticking true with Tomo. I thought Jamin Crabb, the course suited him a little bit with his left-handed hooks, and I think that Tomo's got a lot of room for improvement. So I'm getting ready to be carried by him again, and I'm pretty confident with the rounds that I've played up here in Queensland. Courses aren't closed yet. That we'll have your number the next time.
Well, Johnny, you better get to work, mate, because last time you messaged us, you told us had 36 points off 18. Bit of work to do with that handicap, but thanks for joining us. Stay safe in isolation, and hopefully we'll see you back on the court soon.
Yeah, just quickly, Groffy. Tell Leighton to put away his phone on the course, because I saw that you ended up on the clubhouse roof at the Commonwealth, and I don't think I've ever sliced it as far as that. So,
well, they were the freebie sponsored clubs that he gets as well.
Yeah, I know, but mate, I just want to leave you with one thing: just because you can comment doesn't mean you should.
Oh, geez.
Good stuff, Johnny.
Mate, thank you for joining us. One of the great Aussie scrappers currently on the court. I think we can refer to him as that. He works hard, Johnny. But now we're going to bring you guys our look at the best Aussie scrappers of all time, I guess, in our segment, The GOAT.
We've just witnessed one of the great sporting fightbacks.
Langer, danger. Langer's over. Yes.
A bumping, thumping run.
New South Wales have won it.
Dellavedova, the basketball is on the floor. You want to win, don't talk about it, be about it. And his teammates love him.
And it's a brilliant performance from Steve Waugh. Great moment in the history of Australian Test cricket.
Well, there's certainly been some great Aussie scrappers across our sporting history, and we're going to give ours, my first two. So 2 honourable mentions. Obviously, I'm a Swans man at heart. I'm going to go with first, Brett Kirk. Obviously, captain of the Swans, in and under, really got himself in the dirt, wasn't shy in putting his head in the pack, and I think he really helped build that Bloods culture that made Sydney so successful, that was able to bring them that premiership in 2005 and break the drought. Second for me is Cadel Evans. I think as a cyclist, his ability and the way he won the Tour de France, where he didn't lead until the second last stage as a 37-year-old. And I think as a country, we probably don't have the cycling history and the pedigree that they have in Europe. So for him to go and win...
Yeah, he had to do it the hard way, and he certainly grinded his way to get that yellow jersey.
Yeah, he certainly did. And this one, it does pain me a little bit to give you my greatest Aussie scrapper, because I have a 1-0 head-to-head against this guy.
No, of course.
It is you.
Oh, that's a backhanded sledge there.
I sound like I might be sucking up to you a bit, but obviously, 616 wins, 262 career win-loss record, 30 singles titles, 2 Grand Slams in the 01 US Open, the 02 Wimbledon, 2 Davis Cup titles,
I was certainly
80
scrapping
weeks.
around out there on the court, mate, trying to dig myself out of a few holes, but... as you said, I wasn't able to get the win against you, and I wasn't able to get the Australian Open final win against Marat Safin there. But, for me, it was all about just going out there and competing and giving 100% every time I stepped onto the match court.
Yeah, I think you know, a scrapper. If you get world number one, you're probably the best scrapper that we've got here. So, but I will ask you for your two. So 2 honourable mentions and then your greatest.
Yeah, for me, Jeff Fennick was one. He always went out there. He won 3 different weight divisions in boxing. He always had a massive crack when he went out there. And also my other mention goes to Georgie Gregan. He was the most capped international player for the Wallabies.
Also successful as well during his playing career.
Yeah, he was a captain as well of the Wallabies. And then my GOAT for the Australian scrapper goes to Justin Langer. Guy that wore his heart in his sleeve every time he went out to play for the green and gold. He made 250 in a Boxing Day test as well. He averaged over 45, playing over 105 test matches for Australia, and he was certainly one of the great opening batsmen.
Have you seen the test? Obviously, he's taken over now as the Australian cricket team coach, and the influence that he's had on those players has been pretty incredible.
Yeah, absolutely, and he came in such a tough time as well, so I think his leadership has been fantastic for a young, inexperienced group as well, and I think that goes to show the kind of person that Justin is.
Well, great history we have in Australian sports, some great scrappers. Something for the young kids to maybe get back while they're at home, sitting around, not much to do, look back at some of the greats of Australian sport. But one thing that has taken off during this lockdown period, it's been the rise of esports. We saw it this week in tennis. The Madrid Masters went online, and I don't think it was as much a success as they probably would have wanted.
A few hiccups there throughout. I think a few of the matches had to be cancelled, and it wasn't for rain delays, that's for sure, but they couldn't get them online. So on day one, they actually only got through about half the field, but it was intriguing to watch. I thought, you know, they probably could have done a little bit better with the commentary. It was interesting to hear some of the players' insights, though, when they were playing the video games. And one thing that you don't see too often is Rafael Nadal lose on clay. And he lost at the Madrid Open to Andy Murray, who's actually coming back from hip surgery. But Andy was very funny on there with his online commentary.
Yeah, great to get a little bit of the feedback, or the little bit of the player's personality coming through. But one sport that has really taken off during this period of lockdown in a virtual way is the V8 Supercars and their E-Series, and we're joined by V8 Supercar driver Scott Pye of the DWWOS Racing Team. Scotty, thanks for joining us, mate.
Hey, thanks for having me on. Cheers, guys.
Obviously, for you guys, a real strange period. You obviously in lockdown, doing everything virtual. Was it the Formula One Australian Grand Prix that you guys thought you were actually going to be out on track? You'd been doing your practice rounds. I was in one of the garages down there. We'd been communicating a little bit, but this all came out of nowhere a little bit. You guys thought you were going to race that weekend?
Yeah, we did. Right up until, I think it was Friday morning. We had our race suits on, engines had been warmed up, everything was good to go, and Formula One had already cancelled. And then I think it was the right decision. Obviously, knowing that now, it was the right decision anyway. But at the time, we couldn't be the only sport in the whole paddock that continued on. So our event was cancelled as well, and obviously we've been effectively locked down since then. So certainly missing the real world. But you mentioned that the E-Series has taken off for us. I mean, we're in a fortunate position that, for us to play in a virtual world, there's still a lot of similarities. We've still got a wheel, 3 pedals. Obviously, it's a video game, so it's not exactly like the real thing, but we're still using tools which are very similar to the ergonomics in the real thing.
Well, it's incredible how real it looks as well. And Scotty, I think you had a race last night, mate. How did that end up for you?
It's frustrating sometimes. I have to tell myself that it's a game, and if it was real. But yeah, last night was crazy. I flipped actually on the first lap of a race by I made an apex. So if you don't know what that is, I clipped the inside curb and it just flipped over. So that'll teach me for getting a corner right. But it's fun. I mean, at the end of the day, this is it's a bit of fun. Everyone's in lockdown or in isolation, and it offers some entertainment for some fans that at the moment wouldn't be getting it. So I think the category's done an amazing job. The level of professionalism for the TV coverage is amazing. We've still got the same producer we would have for the real world sport as we do for iRacing, for online racing, for esports. So there's certainly no drop in professionalism there, and the spectators are given more of an insight than ever, I guess, into what we do, because they can tune in. They're listening to us on Twitch now. They're hearing us talk to our engineers, which you wouldn't normally get to do, and then we're talking smack to each other at the same time as we're racing each other. So anytime someone runs into me or bangs into me, I call them out, abuse them, and we get it back.
I love it. So competitive.
Yeah, that's half the fun, isn't it?
Obviously, for you guys, though, you got to think that motorsport is one of those sports that can be done almost without touching anybody. Obviously, the pit crews all work pretty closely together. They share tools. Any idea when we might see V8 Supercars back on the track?
I think we're probably looking at around August, realistically. I think the problem we've got is the amount of people it takes to make our show happen. But we are in a fortunate position where, the atmosphere really comes from the sound of our race cars as well. So on TV, we don't necessarily see the crowd itself, so we can focus mainly on the show and still put on a really good coverage. But like any sport, what is it really without the fans at the events? And that's what makes it for all of us athletes. I'm sure for you guys on a court, half of your motivation comes from the crowd and who's around you, the atmosphere. So that's going to be strange if we do go back racing, because I believe there's not going to be fans allowed at the events, and that's certainly going to be different. But at the end of the day, if we can still put something on TV and give everyone something to enjoy and be happy about right now, that's what sport is about. I think giving enjoyment to some people in a tough time. But yeah, hopefully soon.
Yeah, I agree with you, mate. It'd be great to see sport back soon. We wish you all the best. Stay safe, and hopefully you're back in the car on the real track very shortly.
Thanks, guys. Cheers.
Thanks, Scotty. Cheers, mate. Well, obviously we want to see sport back as soon as possible, but there's quite a few things still happening, and we're going to go through a little segment we like to call Ace or Fault. So, Rusty, I'm going to throw a few things at you. Obviously, pretty self-explanatory.
Well, I've got some for you, mate. And I think the first one I'm going to start with for you, Grothy, is we are based in Victoria, and golf is banned in Victoria. What are your thoughts around that, especially when it's open to the rest of the country?
It's been pretty incredible, hasn't it? I want to be back on the golf course as soon as possible. We played golf right before lockdown happened, before we all got shut down. We weren't holding hands, we weren't sharing equipment.
You couldn't touch the flagstick either. They had put great precautions around everything on a golf course, and I think, I know you're saying fault, I'm saying double fault. For this, I think this has to change. I know Sam Newman, the ex-footy icon, has been very outspoken in it, but having different rules and regulations to different states I don't think is fair. Plus, if you can go to certain markets and also a lot of the parks, and there's so many more people around there, yet when you go to a golf course you'll only see one or two people.
Yeah, I agree with you. Something that's very close to us though, our next one, horse racing. How is it still operating as basically the only sport running nationally right now? It's something we both have an interest in.
Yeah, well, it's fantastic that it is, because it gives us something to watch throughout the week, and especially on Saturdays. There'd been some big racing, especially at Royal Randwick over the last few weeks, and we own a horse together as well, and it was actually able to run, and this is me sitting in my lounge suite, and we've got the boys, Grothy's down there on the group chat with the other owners, who are a few of the tennis boys actually, Darren Cale, Jamin Crabb, Peter Luchak, and our horse, Evening Glory, got up for second there, and not a bad run. Grothy was obviously a bit frustrated. He obviously had a few too much on it. But for us, it's great that they've been able to work out ways to still be able to go ahead. And I think, I've got another one for you with the virtual NFL draft. Incredible that it could go ahead. Before this, a lot of people were saying, no, you've got to cancel it. It can't be done virtually. I think it was a great insight.
Yeah, I do too. I'm definitely going with an ace for that one. I think the way the NFL handled themselves, the commissioner, but the moment of the draft for me was when they crossed to Patriots coach Bill Belichick and found him not quite looking like himself. So Bill Belichick there on the Super, and his dog sitting there looking at the screen. So you're hoping they got that pick. They actually made some controversial picks in that draft, the Patriots. So interesting.
That's obviously his secret weapon.
Yeah, well, he's done something right over the last few years up there with New England, that's for sure. But I guess that probably does us for the week, mate. Obviously, first show. Handled it all right, got through.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. And for us, it's about giving our opinion on different sports that's going on in the world. Right now, it's a totally different world in sport, but there's still a lot of big talking points and topics to go through. And, I like being out here with my old sparring partner, Grothy.
Well, mate, you've been fantastic. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. Head to wideworldofsports.com.au. That's WWOS.com.au. And we'll catch you next time. Cheers.